There is a Lama named Mendong Lama Sherab from Lachi, a place where Milarepa once meditated. It is a very isolated place near the border of Nepal and Tibet. At that time, the border was closed with no passage through there, so it became a very isolated place to which no one ever came. Lama Sherab meditated in a cave there for 3 years. When I spoke with him about his experiences, I said, "You must have had many realizations and experiences there, since there was nothing to distract you." He replied, "Even if you sit alone in a cave, the mind still becomes distracted. If you don't control the mind, it will wander. During meditation, it is essential to control the mind to prevent it from wandering. Therefore, meditation should be under firm control to protect it from arising thoughts." This text describes various kinds of Samatha and Vipassana because it is a treasury of knowledge that presents all knowledge. The above practices are taught in the Sutra tradition. In the Vajrayana tradition, what is practiced is the system of Kamalasila, which begins with an external object and then moves to an internal object. Samatha is generally developed by watching the breath. In Kamalasila's Vajrayana tradition, one first focuses on an external object, such as a Buddha image, as we often do, and then watches the breath, combining these two approaches. During deity practice, one can meditate on a Buddha image, especially the image of a Sambhogakaya Buddha. That is why there are many Buddha images in Tibetan Buddhism. On the one hand, gazing at Buddha images brings blessings and purifies karmic obstacles. On the other hand, it helps strengthen meditative stability. Continuously meditating on Buddha images can enhance concentration. One then rests the mind on the breath. The Vajrayana tradition often adopts this method of samatha, which is relatively fast. Vipassana is usually practiced through the analysis of external objects and emptiness, as well as internal objects and awareness, using the various methods described above. This is very important. The first analysis concerns external objects and emptiness. One meditates that external phenomena or objects are empty without inherent nature. As I often say, mind and objects are non-dual, but it is essential to meditate on this. What are objects? They are external phenomena. To analyze the emptiness of these objects, you can use meditation on impermanence and multiplicity, as well as the Madhyamaka reasoning to refute the 4 possibilities of arising, not arising from oneself, from another, from the combination of both, or from no cause. In this way, we see that phenomena arise illusorily, without real birth or cessation. This is the analysis of external objects and emptiness. External objects are empty without inherent nature. The second is the analysis of internal objects and awareness. Internal objects refer to the perceiver, consciousness, including eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, and so on, as well as the 6th, 7th, and 8th consciousnesses. These are all objects of attachment. By analyzing the internal objects and awareness, we ultimately recognize that the 8 consciousnesses and awareness are also inseparable. As I have said, the mind and objects are non-dual. Therefore, emptiness and awareness are also non-dual. Yesterday, someone said, Buddha nature and Dharma nature are different. As I often address, Buddha nature is Dharma nature. Did he not hear? Haven't I mentioned this before? The nature of all phenomena is called Dharma nature. The potential to become a Buddha is called Buddha nature. The emptiness of all phenomena is called emptiness. They refer to the same thing, just expressed from different perspectives. There are also terms such as the one true Dharma Dhatu and the true mind, which likewise refer to the same thing. The one true Dharma Dhatu is Dharma nature, and the true mind is Buddha nature. So, aren't they the same? If they were distinct, wouldn't that be a problem? Vipassana is usually practiced through the analysis of external objects and emptiness, as well as internal objects and awareness, using the various methods described above. However, the approach followed in a Vajrayana tradition is the internal inseparability of emptiness and awareness. Emptiness is Dharma nature, and awareness is Buddha nature. When meditation is stable, the mind rests in its natural stability. When thoughts arise, the mind is in movement. One then looks at the nature of this movement. This does not involve analytical reasoning or logic, but a direct experience of the nature of the mind at rest and in motion. All phenomena of the mind are objects. This is the usual method followed for developing Vipassana. When the mind is active, there will be appearances or objects. One does not have to analyze the mind logically to find out that it has no existence. One can just look at the mind and see that it is not there. Reflect on the impermanence of the mind. Since it is impermanent, it doesn't truly exist. At the same time, there is the process of knowing or awareness. Awareness appears to exist, but it is also impermanent. The word for mind in Tibetan is sem or shepa, which means that which knows. However, if one tries to find out what it is that knows, one can't find anything. It means that awareness cannot be found. The activity of awareness is unceasing, but one can't find anything that knows. This is selflessness. We can call it the inseparability of clarity and emptiness. Selflessness is something we haven't really considered throughout the beginningless time we have been in samsara, because our attention has always been turned outward. The mind is always lost in the external world, centered on I, and has never reflected on selflessness. Awareness looks outward without examining whether the self behind it truly exists. But when one turns inward, one sees this selflessness and the union of clarity and emptiness. This emptiness, however, is not nothing whatsoever, because there is the interdependence of phenomena, the awareness of what we experience, the forms we see, the sounds we hear, and so on. Emptiness is not a state of nothingness, but the presence of all kinds of phenomena: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, mental objects. If we do not control the mind, all obscurations can arise in it. These experiences appear like watching a movie. There is nothing actually there in the theatre, yet all these pictures, sounds, and emotions appear in the mind. We perceive these objects in our minds, but has anything truly happened? We see images, hear sounds, and all emotions and constructs arise in our minds. Appearances arise in the mind, but upon closer investigation, we see that they have no true existence, but are just the interdependence of phenomena. The third Karmapa, Rangjang Dorje, described the nature of Samatha and Vipassana in the Vajrayana tradition. In Samatha, obvious and subtle waves of thought naturally become pacified. He said that these thoughts, both obvious and subtle, are like waves on the sea, sometimes large, sometimes small. When the waves cease, the sea becomes completely still, without movement. Similarly, we sometimes have subtle thoughts, sometimes obvious ones. When these are fully pacified, the mind becomes totally still, serene, and unmoving, like a calm sea. However, even a completely still sea may contain pollution, so clear water must flow into it for it to become entirely pure. Likewise, even when the mind has been stilled, which means it has entered concentration, the defect of dullness can still arise. Correct samatha occurs when this defect is removed, resulting in a state of calm, stability, and clarity. Even though the waves have subsided, this concentration is not deep enough. Genuine samatha arises only when the impurities in the sea have completely settled. Even after the waves are gone, impurities remain in the sea because the waves have stirred up the silt. After the waves subside, the water needs to gradually clear to become free of contaminants. When all impurities have settled, samatha and the state of clarity truly arise. At that point, one has entered a deep concentration. Rangjang Dorje, the third Karmapa, also described Vipassana as looking again and again at something that cannot be seen. This teaching is significant. We shall continuously look at that which cannot be seen. Due to the coarse mind, ordinary beings cannot perceive the truth. For example, with self-grasping, one cannot see the absence of self. When meditating, one may think, clearly there is a self. Isn't that the self? Because of constant self-grasping, we believe there is a self. We cling to the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, or consciousness as the self, regarding appearances as truly existent. Now, we need to gaze at that which cannot be seen and see the nature of appearances. What was previously unseen becomes visible once we perceive it. As you look more deeply, you will find that there are still aspects beyond your perception. Gradually, what was once invisible becomes visible. The Karmapa described Vipassana as looking again and again at something that cannot be seen. Just keep looking. We meditate on selflessness every noon. Previously, we always had a sense of self. Now, we consistently reflect on non-self. Why focus on non-self? When you see that there truly is no self, you attain the first fruition. You will rejoice, filled with the bliss of the dharma, because you actually perceive the absence of a self. Now, we only discuss and analyze non-self theoretically. This is the analytical approach mentioned earlier. We need to directly experience the absence of a self. Using logical analysis, we infer that there is no self in the 5 aggregates, examining these aggregates as phenomena. We should also look inward and see that there is no self in the mind. The nature of the mind cannot be examined or analyzed. He said, one looks at the nature of the mind again and again, but cannot find anything with true existence. This is the deepest level of meditation. By examining this and perceiving the true nature of the mind, one no longer doubts what the mind is like and develops conviction. This is Vipassana meditation. Today, we have gained more understanding of Vipassana. Vipassana means continuously looking at that which cannot be seen. Previously, we clung to the notion of a self. Now, we must see that there is no self. It is like mistaking a rope for a snake in dim light. We keep looking at it until we see that it is a rope, not a snake. We should look inward, especially when meditating on the aggregate of consciousness. We should look at our mind and reflect on its impermanence. Then we realize that the mind, too, arises and ceases in every moment, with every thought. Of course, this meditation is still relatively simple. Looking further inward, first meditate on the selflessness of persons, then on the selflessness of phenomena. Reflect that all phenomena, both material and mental, are illusory, arising and ceasing from moment to moment. Neither inner nor outer phenomena are real. When looking inward, the mind is also impermanent, without inherent nature. There is no self that sees something because the perceiver and the perceived are non-dual. The perceiver is the percept. This point is interesting. At this stage, you are meditating on the middle way. Looking inward, it is the mind. Looking outward, it is objects. Mind and objects are non-dual. Inner and outer phenomena are inseparable. So, where are you? There is no place to be, nowhere to go, not inside, not outside, not somewhere in between, perhaps on top of the old monk's head. By looking even deeper, you can perceive the primordial nature of the mind, the true mind. What was seen earlier is still the false mind. By looking further, you can see the true mind. Finally, even the observer and the observed merge into one. When there is nothing left to observe, look again. Who is observing? Both observer and observed disappear.